good about dying, so you really want to get free of it. So that the word that modifies the meaning is, it says, becomes anxious to get free from the clutches of death. So that's the second meaning here. Wanting something very much, typically with a feeling of unease. The company was anxious to avoid any trouble. But here it says, anxious to get free from the clutches of death. See how tricky the English language can be? Very tricky. Okay, so modern scientists try to avoid death by physiochemical advancement of knowledge. What does that mean, physiochemical? Huh? Well, what does physio mean? We know what chemical means. What does physio mean? The body, yeah. So by adjusting the chemicals in the body, by taking pills, getting injections, and so forth. It's physiochemical. Modern scientists try to avoid death by physiochemical advancement of knowledge. But alas, this is a nice word, alas. You know what the alas means? It means like, oh my God. What? Yeah, unfortunately. But alas, the controller of death, Yamaraja, is so cruel that he does not spare even the very life of the scientist himself. The scientist who puts forward the theory of stopping death by advancement of scientific knowledge becomes himself a victim of death when he is called by Yamaraja. What to speak of stopping death? No one can enhance the short period of life even by a fraction of a moment. So when people are promising you some miracle supplement by which you can have life enhancement, increase the duration of your life, don't believe it. Don't believe it. Yes. Nitrogen tank. They freeze you, but they do it right before you die. But you tell me, if I freeze you, and then when I unfreeze you, will you come alive or will you be dead? Yeah, you're dead. Bingo, you're not going to be alive when they unfreeze you. And it's expensive. We've discussed this before. It costs like $150,000 a year. But the first guy who did that in California, after some years, he went bankrupt. Huh? No, he went bankrupt. You know, businesses sometimes go bankrupt. What do you think happened to all the people that were frozen? They unfroze them. They turned off the electricity because he couldn't pay for it. Even though he promised, at contracts, he promised the people who got frozen that they would be kept alive, and then when they found the cure for the disease, they would be unfrozen and they would heal them. The guy who had the factory where they kept the tanks, each person gets an individual nitrogen tank, and it has a window so you can see their face. You know, they're in there, dead, right? And you can see them, and there's like smoky and things like that because it's nitrogen. But the man went bankrupt, so they turned off the electricity. You believe people? The whole thing is a scam. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yashomati Nandana Brajabara Nagara गोकुलरञ्जनकाना गोपीपरानदन मदन मनोहर गोपीपरानदन मदन मनोहर कालिय दमन विदान अमल हरिनाममिय विलास अमल हरिनाममिय विलास विपिन पुरंदर नवीनगर बर वंशी बदान सुवास प्रजन पालन सुरकुल नासन प्रजन पालन सुरकुल नासन नंद गोधन रघुवाला गोविंद माधव नवनीत तस्कर गोविंद माधव नवनीत तस्कर सुंदर नंद गोपाल जमुन तट चर गोपी बसन हर रसिक कृप मोया श्री राधा वल्लभ वृंदावन नटवर श्री राधा वल्लभ वृंदावन नटवर भक्ति विनोद शाया यशोमती नंदन ब्रजवर नागर गोकुल रंजन काना जयो राधा नीला माधव राधा नीला माधव श्री राधे जयो राधा नीला माधव राधा नीला माधव श्री राधे जयो लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जयो लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जयो लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जयो लक्ष्मी Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
So, Advitya, how do you avoid death? You know, how do you avoid death? Just listen now, you're going to learn. Okay. So if you say someone is anxious to die, what does that mean? No. No.
Anxious to die?
Here it says anxious to get free from the clutches of death. So what does anxious to get free from the clutches of death, is it difference in meaning when you just say anxious to die? Yes. There's a big difference in meaning. So anxious to die would be, well, in context, it would mean you can't wait to die. Or you have some, let's say, anxiety about it. But in one sense, it means that, you're waiting for it. You actually want to die. But anxious to get free from the clutches of death, it's something that you want to avoid. You want to find some way to avoid dying. Whereas anxious to die means you're worried about it, but it can also imply that you want to die. Okay, so it says here that modern scientists try to avoid death by physiochemical advancement of knowledge, but alas, but unfortunately, the controller of death, Yamaraj, is so cruel that he does not spare even the very life of the scientist himself. The scientist who puts forward the theory of stopping death by advancement of scientific knowledge becomes himself a victim of death when he is called by Yamaraj. What to speak of stopping death? No one can enhance the short period of life even by a fraction of a moment. The only hope of suspending the cruel, slaughtering process of Yamaraj is to call him to hear and chant the holy name of the Lord. So what does that sentence mean? The only hope of suspending the cruel, slaughtering process of Yamaraj is to call him to hear and chant the holy name of the Lord. What does that mean? Okay, Augustine. Well, it uses the word suspending. Is that like a suspender? Yes. Let's take a look. Suspend can also have several meanings.
Like you're suspended, like everyone is even suspended.
Temporarily prevent from continuing or being in force or effect. Officially prohibit someone from holding their usual post. So that's not the meaning. Defer or delay an action, event, or judgment. Hang from somewhere. Of solid particles be dispersed throughout the bulk of a fluid. So temporarily prevent from continuing or being in force or effect. So therefore, it would mean, you were right, Shesta says, the scientist who puts forward the theory of stopping death by advancement of something, wait a minute. The only hope of suspending the cruel slaughtering process of Yamaraj is to call him to hear and chant the holy name of the Lord. So you can put it on hold. Then let's see what it says. Yamaraj is a great devotee of the Lord, and he likes to be invited to kirtanas and sacrifices by the pure devotees who are constantly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Thus the great sages, headed by Sonaka and others, invited Yamaraj to attend the sacrifice performed at Naimisharanya. This was good for those who did not want to die. So you suspend, in other words, everyone's going to die. But instead of taking some miracle drug to prolong your life, you can suspend your death, or in a sense, put off your death by inviting Yamaraj to a Harinam Sankirtan, or a Sankirtan party, and therefore be beneficial to those who do not want to die. Okay. Now, if Yamaraj comes and enjoys the kirtan because it's done by pure devotees who are constantly engaged in devotional service to the Lord, such devotees, by continual kirtan, will go back to Godhead, because at the moment of death they'll remember Krishna. So if you want to suspend, if you want to prolong, or if you want to stop dying when you should die, it's not by the physiochemical processes of the scientists. It's by inviting Yamaraj to your Sankirtan, to Kirtan, and pleasing him by engaging him also in doing Kirtan. So it says, Yamaraj is a great devotee of the Lord, and he likes to be invited to kirtanas and sacrifices by the pure devotees who are constantly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Okay. Next. As long as Yamaraj, who causes everyone's death, is present here, no one shall meet with death. The great sages have invited the controller of death, Yamaraj, who is the representative of the Lord. Living beings who are under his grip should take advantage by hearing the deathless nectar in the form of this narration of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. So, this is okay, let's read the purport and then I'll explain. Every human being dislikes meeting death, but he does not know how to get rid of death. The surest remedy for avoiding death is to accustom oneself to hearing the nectarian pastimes of the Lord as they are systematically narrated in the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is advised herein, therefore, that any human being who desires freedom from death should take to this course of life as recommended by the rishis, headed by Sonaka. So now the real facts are clear. You can suspend this death by inviting Yamaraj to hear and chant the holy names of the Lord, because he's a devotee, he's a great devotee, and likes to be invited to kirtanas. Yeah.
How would we invite Yamaraj?
How would you do it? The same way that they do it. Send him an invitation. And he's a living entity, right? Just like you are. If you invite him, he'll come. Traditionally, in previous times, whenever there was any yagya or sacrifices performed, all the demigods were invited, and they would set plates for all the demigods, all the main ones, not all of them, but all the main ones. Right? So there would be like sometimes hundreds of plates. No one's sitting there. You can't see them sitting there, but their plates were there. This was Indra, this was Shiva, this was Chandra, this was Varuna, this was Mitra, like that. They would all have their plates. They do that still in, there's this one temple called Radha Damodar Temple in Vrindavan. They do that still. There's some other temples that do that. So you invite them, and they'll come. You might not see them, but they will come. And they'll... Well, how do you invite someone to your birthday party?
I call them.
Okay, you invite them, right? You want to know how to call Yamaraj? You want to know his phone number or something? Well, we'll read on, you'll see how they do it. Okay. So, if you want to suspend or let's say, get a temporary extension of your life, it's by inviting Yamaraj to kirtan. If you want to become free of death, then the remedy for avoiding death is to accustom oneself to hearing the nectarian pastimes of the Lord as they are systematically narrated in the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is advised herein, therefore, that any human being who desires freedom from death should take to this course of life as recommended by the rishis headed by Sonaka. So, over 5,000 years ago, the great sages in Naimisharanya made a recommendation for the people in Kali Yuga, how they could free themselves from death and from all the negative effects of Kali Yuga. That is, by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now you know why Prabhupada translated the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's so many Vedic literatures. Why did he choose Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam as the main works that he translated, along with Nectar of Devotion and Chaitanya Charitamrita? Those are the four main books that everyone should read and study regularly. Well, because this Bhagavatam was spoken 5,000 years ago, and then again respoken at this great assembly of sages by Sukadeva Goswami, and then again later on by Sutta Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami spoke it to Maharaj Parikshit on the banks of the Yamuna, but then later on Sutta Goswami spoke it again to the sages in Naimisharanya. And Naimisharanya, by the way, is near Nepal. It's near the Himalayan mountains. It's east of Delhi, east and somewhat north from Delhi, and it's close to the Himalayan mountains. It's still there today. It's the same place. In fact, we were talking about making plans to having a parikrama to Naimisharanya next year, where we can sit down and listen to Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't know if we're going to do that, but that was suggested. So, then next verse says, lazy human beings. Lazy human, you know any lazy human beings? Huh? Yeah. lazy human beings with paltry intelligence. What does paltry mean? Yeah, very little. Very little intelligence. And a short duration of life, pass the night sleeping and the day performing activities that are for naught. N-A-U-G-H-T. You know what naught means? It means nothing. Useless. Waste of time. This is a verse. This is Canto 1, Chapter 16, verse number 9. So we read 7, 8, and this is 9. The less intelligent do not know the real value of human form of life. The human form is a special gift of material nature in the course of her enforcing stringent laws of miseries upon the living being. Did you know that? That this material nature, which is under the control of Durga, it's under the control of Krishna, but Durga is his agent for it, enforces stringent laws of misery on the living beings. That means us. We are under stringent laws of misery. Stringent means very strict. You can't get away from them. You ever have a toothache? You ever have a tummy ache? You ever get a really bad cold? So those are stringent laws of miseries. And as you get older, they get worse. Worse and worse until you die. It is a chance to achieve, the human form of life is a chance to achieve the highest boon or the highest blessing of life, namely to get out of the entanglement of repeated birth and death. The intelligent take care of this important gift by strenuously endeavoring to get out of the entanglement. But the less intelligent are lazy and unable to evaluate the gift of the human body to achieve liberation from the material bondage. They become more interested in so-called economic development and work very hard throughout life simply for the sense enjoyment of the temporary body. Sense enjoyment is also allowed to the lower animals by the law of nature, and thus a human being is also destined to a certain amount of sense enjoyment according to his past or present life. But one should definitely try to understand that sense enjoyment is not the ultimate goal of human life. So, your friends at school, Krishna, and do you think their goal in life is sense gratification? How do you know that? Do you say that too? Not much. Okay. So you say a little bit, right? Yeah. Arush, what do you think? Yeah? Your friends at school? What do they talk about? Uh-huh. You have an example? They don't talk about video games? Okay. That's all sense gratification. 100% sense gratification. Go ahead. And what else? And what do they usually want to do in recess? What? A what? Yeah. Gaga ball? Gaga, like.
I played that in elementary.
So they talk about Gaga ball in recess. Okay. Okay, so, but the less intelligent are lazy and unable to evaluate the gift of the human body. What is the human body meant for? Yeah, and to understand Krishna. You have all the equipment to understand Krishna. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, intelligence, mind. But people misuse them for other reasons, other things, and not really interested in understanding Krishna. But less intelligent are lazy and unable to evaluate the gift of the human body to achieve liberation from the material bondage. Material bondage means birth, death, old age, disease. They become more interested in so-called economic development and work very hard throughout life simply for the sense enjoyment of the temporary body. Sense enjoyment is also allowed to lower animals by the law of nature, and thus a human being is also destined to a certain amount of sense enjoyment according to his past or present life. But one should definitely try to understand that sense enjoyment is not the ultimate goal of human life. Herein it is said that during the daytime one works for nothing because the aim is nothing but sense enjoyment. We can particularly observe how the human being is engaged for nothing in the great cities and industrial towns. There are so many things manufactured by human energy, but they are all meant for sense enjoyment and not for getting out of material bondage. And after working hard during the daytime, a tired man either sleeps or engages in sex habits at night. That is the program of materialistic civilized life for the less intelligent. Therefore, they are designated herein as lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. Ouch! This is what you call a indictment. Indictment. What is an indictment? They're accused of being lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived because of their bad habits, thinking that the whole purpose of human life and the human body is sense gratification. And to get more sense gratification, you need economic development. And therefore, everything they do during the day is for naught. What does that mean, Prabhalika? What does that mean? Huh? What? Didn't you hear what I just said? No! You were sitting right here. You're not even 10 feet away from me. Can you answer the question, Ria? What does it mean? You can say it a little bit louder. You don't know? Yeah, okay. So were you listening to Prabhalika? So let's try and listen, okay? So what does it mean that herein it is said that during the daytime one works for nothing because the aim is nothing but sense enjoyment. We can particularly observe how the human being is engaged for nothing in the great cities and industrial towns. There are so many things manufactured by human energy, but they are all meant for sense enjoyment and not for getting out of material bondage. And after working hard during the daytime, a tired man either sleeps or engages in sex habits at night. That is the program of materialistic civilized life for the less intelligent. Therefore, they are designated herein as lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. So, if you have some project in homework in school, you can choose the project that people are working for naught. That's your project. And you can go and explain this to the other kids. They'll go, why did you choose such a stupid subject? Doesn't make sense. We didn't understand anything you said. That's right. That's because they're dumb. They can't understand what's being said. So, this is called an indictment. You know, like a serious accusation that's going to go to trial. And you know who the judge is in the trial? Yamaraj, exactly right. Very good, Krishna. Yamaraj is the judge to see whether you wasted your life by being lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived, or you used your human body and a little bit of time that we're given in this body for Krishna consciousness. Very serious subject. Then the next verse, number 10, says, well, then this is the lesson today. So your homework, explain why a human being would be characterized as lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. And and then the second part of the homework, how does a devotee avoid being lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived? So there you have to explain the secret of how to suspend the onslaught of death, and secondly, how to be liberated completely from death. Okay? So your homework is number one. There's 3 parts to it. Number 1 is explain what it means that a human being is lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. Lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. Explain what that means. Describe what the life of that human being is, who is lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived.
Explain why a human being would be characterized that way?
Yeah, as lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. And secondly, explain the life of a devotee who is not lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. You're going to have to explain how the lazy, unfortunate, short-lived use the human body and all the assets of the human body, including intelligence, mind, senses, and so forth, and how the devotee uses the human body and time that they have living in it with the assets of senses, which are knowledge-acquiring organs, and the mind and the intelligence. Okay. And then number 3, explain how you can suspend or put off death, and with that, how you can become liberated from death. Got it? How to suspend the onslaught of death, or the coming of death. That means you put it off, right? And then along with that, how to become completely liberated from death. So you have these 3 verses, Canto 1, chapter 16, verse 7, 8, and 9. 1, 16, 7, 8, and 9. And also, there's another verse that's very good to know. In First Canto, first chapter, I'm going to give you another verse for your homework. Huh?
What are the other verses?
116, 7, 8, and 9. Verses 7, 8, and 9. Okay, so also you want to read Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 10, 11, 14, 14, and 16. You have to read those verses. That'll give you some supplementary information to help you do your homework. Haribol. Oh, glory to Srila Prabhupada. And then, Krishna, you write up what you did for the homework for today and send it to me. Did you do any homework? You did? Oh, let me hear what your homework is. Yeah, that's all right. You write up whatever you... Look up the references. Make sure they're right. Arush, did you do any homework? Oh. That's not an excuse, by the way. You can ask someone what the homework was.
Or you can check online.
You can check online?
Online, the lectures are posted, right?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
The homework was explain lift, thrust, drag, and weight. So,
In other words, aerodynamics.
Yeah.
Laws of aerodynamics.
So-
Lift, thrust, what?
Drag and weight.
Drag and weight. Yeah, lift, thrust.
So, lift is, like, let's say there's an airplane and it's flying. Lift is the force that makes the airplane stay in the air and not so it's not falling to the ground. Weight is dragging it down with gravity. Thrust is pushing it forward, and drag is pulling it back. So.
Lift, thrust, drag, and weight, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But, okay, that's the short answer. Do you have a longer answer? So that's another part of your homework for next week. Give a longer answer with examples and diagrams. You have a diagram? Let me see it. Ah, okay. Yeah, very good. So develop this some more, everybody. You should learn what the lift, thrust, drag, and weight. You should understand how airplanes are held in the air. This is because it defies the law of gravity. And it helps you to understand, well, of course it says there's no law, the law of gravity is nonsense, but it gives you an idea of how a very heavy object can be held in the air by manipulation of the air.
Yeah, like clouds.
Clouds also, yes. But the idea of the cloud is a little different than the idea of the airplane being held in the air. So give some more explanation with some diagrams and present it next week. Haribol. Well, glory to Srila Prabhupada. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Tomorrow. Yeah, it's a lot of. That's good. You won't waste your time and be lazy the rest of Saturday.